Whether you operate one forklift or thousands, one location or hundreds, the new My Toyota customer portal can help you optimize your operation and material handling equipment. This one-stop, free-to-use platform is designed to help you take control of your information and make smarter decisions, all at the touch of a button. Register and access your data today at my.toyotaforklift.com. That's my.toyotaforklift.com.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey guys, this is Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast. This week we have a new episode. I'm going to be joined with Kevin Ledversis. He is the Director of Sales for Newcastle Systems. If you guys have been following along with us, you may remember that one of our ProMat episodes, we talked to Christine Wheeler at Newcastle as well about their products that they were showcasing at ProMat. Kevin is coming on the show. He's going to talk to us more about Newcastle, what they offer, but he's also going to talk to us. He has a pretty extensive lean and continuous improvement background, certifications and experience. So he's going to talk to us about that in general, and then he's going to talk to us about how that relates to Newcastle, which, you know, the Newcastle systems are very mobile and lean and help with continuous improvement as well. So Kevin, how are you? Welcome to the show.
Good, Kevin. I'm well. Appreciate you having me on today.
Definitely. Thanks for being on, and thanks for reaching out to and showing interest in the show. Happy to have you on. So why don't you tell us, I guess, a little bit about your background? I know you're the Director of Sales for Newcastle, but I saw in your experience, you have a lot of lean and continuous improvement experience, which I think is very impressive. And I think as a Director of Sales position, the fact that you went through that to get that experience and kind of relate to your customers more is really something that I think I admire and appreciate.
Yeah. So I got my start. I didn't originally work in sales. I got my start in manufacturing. I actually worked for Stanley Tools, one of the largest tool makers. Most people have a Stanley tape rule in their house somewhere.
Definitely.
But I was fortunate enough to work there in the 80s when, we were pretty much making everything here in the U.S. We had, 5,000 employees. And, back in those days, we didn't have to worry about offshore competition, so we weren't the most efficient organization, I can tell you. Lean didn't really exist yet. And so, unfortunately, there's a lot of places in America where, business eventually got outsourced. And as a rule, I often wonder if the companies are more efficient, could we have kept a lot of that still here? But I got great training there. It was a big company, manufacturing products in different factories around the country. We were pretty much vertically integrated company. We would take a tree down in a forest and turn it into a hammer handle and put a hammer on it. It was a pretty cool experience for a young guy. But from there, I ended up getting into sales. I was getting a little antsy. I thought I wanted to be outside of the four walls and answering that in the paper. And long and short of it, I ended up in what was then, before it even really happened, was the barcoding industry. And I got really fortunate because people were just starting to use that technology. So I lived in that space for a long, long time. And while I was in that space, I had one customer called Wire Mold, which, for those of you who are into lean and process improvement, there are literally books written by Wire Mold and how successful they were. I got to live that as a vendor, which was really cool because it challenged me for the whole just-in-time thing. We had to literally put a mini warehouse across the street from them because they wouldn't accept our stuff from Chicago. It was too long of a lead time.
Interesting. So they challenged you actually to continuously improve.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they did. And, I wish that our company maybe took it upon themselves to get trained themselves. We were just supporting this one company, but it was such a good customer of ours. And because I've learned so much from them, but I didn't have any formal training. And it wasn't until I ended up in Newcastle, I ended up here by luck. It was maybe bad luck. I was in a really bad motorcycle accident, 2013, and I was in rough shape. I was out of work a long time, and just an old boss said, "Hey, have you heard of this company?" I had not heard of this company. I didn't even really know what they did. So I went up and visited them. They're a really small company, but they had a really cool product and a good story. And so I got involved with them really as an outside sales guy, just trying to figure out why people bought these things. And while I was out in the field, I kept hearing lean again. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I had a little training, but nothing formal. And so I said to the owner, I keep hearing this lean stuff, and the companies that buy these, they seem to be really interested in improving their businesses. They're struggling with getting stuff out the door, and they find that lean is helping them. So I said, let me get some training. He's all for it. I'm fortunate to work for a company that believes in, improving people. So I actually spent 8 weeks, every Thursday for 8 weeks, I worked in a door factory, doors and windows. And I learned the principles of lean through making doors and windows. And then I had to sort of figure out how I could, adjust that to the warehousing space, because there's not a lot of lean continuous improvement training, unfortunately, in the warehousing space. One of the problems is, the warehouse, the distribution center gets treated like the cost center in a lot of companies. Yeah. And they look at the factory as, all right, that's where the money's going to get spent, machinery, tools, technology. But, they might be super efficient, but when they put stuff out back to get ready to be shipped or inventory, they lose a lot of the traction they gained. And I find that ironic because, if you want to have a truly lean company, everything has to be lean from the second the order is placed to the second it gets shipped out the door. So I was fortunate enough. I've been into Amazon facilities. I've been into other companies that are really, under pressure to get stuff out fast, 2 days, 3 days, whatever. I can tell you they're very, very efficient. Unfortunately, on the other end of the spectrum are some really, really companies that are struggling, and some real basic, simple things they could do would help them. But again, without training, it's difficult. You're just trying to keep your head above water and get stuff in and out the place as fast as possible. And when there's a lot of waste in a process, it makes it really hard to compete. When the Amazon, are they down to 1 day now delivery or something?
Yeah, that's where they're going. Yeah.
I go to places, they've got stuff sitting on the dock for a week.
Oh, yeah.
They haven't even received it yet. So you just think about the spectrum, and so that's kind of how the lean thing happened. And then once we started focusing on showing people how our product helped improve their processes, and in many cases their KPIs, like dock to stock receiving times, we have people cutting them down in half just by stopping the walking. And we can talk about that in a minute, but in the warehouse space, what I've learned over time, and I learned this from Jason Nagini, he's been in logistics a long time. He works at Kenko Logistics, and he simplified it down to 3 things. It's, motion, touches, and paperwork. Those are the 3 sins in a warehouse. Yeah. And so if you just look at that and nothing else, and do improvement projects on those 3 areas, you're going to be ahead of the curve.
Definitely. Definitely. Yep. Let me ask you something for our younger listeners, since you were there for the beginning of barcoding. What did people do before barcodes? How did they?
Pen and paper. I mean, this is crazy. It's funny to think about this stuff, but we would literally count things by hand. So imagine I remember going in on a Saturday, and I had a 50 gallon drum of screws I had to count. So, it's hard to believe, right?
Yeah,
physical inventory meant physically counting every single thing in a big building.
I can't imagine, because now I know, for me, when I work in my day job as an operations manager, I barcode everything. When I give people logins to the system, I give them a barcode so they can scan in. So that's kind of wild to think about. So we've come a long way, definitely there.
We have, but ironically, there are still about 30% of warehouses that are not using barcoding, if you could imagine that.
Yes, yeah. I did work with the company. We took them from a paper pick system to voice picking, barcode, and everything. So I've definitely experienced it. It's kind of crazy to think about. And like you said, they're missing these opportunities to kind of continuously improve that. And the barcode definitely is a huge way to make a jump into that.
Absolutely.
So what do you think in terms of, so you've seen this and, like you said, in warehousing, lean and continuous improvement sometimes is lost in that section. So, people that are listening, how do you think, one of their first steps to kind of getting into the lean and continuous improvement culture, because it's really a cultural movement within the company. How do you think, if someone's saying like, I think I want to try that, like, what do you think their first kind of steps should be?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it, lean originates it originated from the Toyota production system. So Toyota is really the company that pioneered lean and perfected it for the most part. But again, it's continuous improvement, so they're never going to perfect it. That's the beauty of lean. It's all about small incremental change. You don't have to make these massive changes. It might be as simple as there's a terminology called 5S that just means, layout, set, sort, shine, standardize, sustain. And, a lot of people have, say, pallets coming in off a truck, but they're not clearly marked as to where to drop them. So an operator will just leave it anywhere. And so nobody even knows what it is. Is it coming or is it going? Does it have to be QA'd? Well, a simple box on the ground that's just taped off that says, needs to be inspected or something is all it takes to visually allow people to know what the heck it is. And there's a lot of simple things that you can learn on your own. There's a ton of books to read. Formal training is great if you have money. If you don't, there's an organization called the American Manufacturing Excellence, AME, and they have regional groups of nonprofit organizations. They have great tours, and they have a lot of knowledge that you can. And they're great. Lean people are really good about sharing. So I mean, if you're not a true competitor, many times they'll be willing to help you. And I'd suggest formal training is great, but if you don't have access to that, you got to do some self-study.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, and like you said, there's a ton of books. I know the one that I read, I don't know if you've read it, is 2 Second Daily Lean by Paul Akers.
Yeah.
I thought
I've seen that guy speak. He's fired up, man. He loves this stuff.
Oh, yeah, he's like obsessed with lean. I've seen some of his videos, yeah. Yeah, it's pretty interesting, and I think that's like it's like a really like simple way to start. I think just think about small increments like that.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us, I guess, so you're director of sales in Newcastle. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Newcastle Systems and kind of the background of the company and how it got to the point, because you're mentioning it was kind of an interesting story.
Yes. So, I mean, our company, we're a private company. The owner started this in his basement about 13 years ago, a fellow by the name of John O'Kelly, and he had previous businesses in workbenches, stacked, fixed tables, and so he saw a need for mobility. He saw that a lot of people, like you think about the FedEx guys or the UPS guys, they're all walking around carrying devices, and they're mobile people.
Yeah.
But inside of the four walls in a lot of places, he just felt like there wasn't enough mobility. And so he just, had a hunch and an idea, and he went for it. And at first, his inclination was to power like test equipment, like in a factory floor, like, calibration and stuff like that. But, he realized that stuff's not really meant to move. So just pure luck at a trade show, like he was getting close to packing it in because it just wasn't taking off. Somebody said, look, this thing is really good, but what it's really shooting for is for warehousing and mainly for receiving trucks. Because when truck backs in and drops off, pallet stuff and has to get labeled.
Yeah.
The guy's grabbing the paperwork, walking to a computer, looking it up, walking back, verifying it, going back to that computer, printing out labels, going back and applying them. And that's the process all day, every day. And that alone is probably the reason that, we've grown so much, is because that take all that walking out of the equation. And like I said, we've had people double their receipts with the same amount of people. It's real simple math. If you can cut, walking in half, you can double productivity. And depending on the size of your building, how far your stuff is away from you, it can add up to a lot of time. Literally, it could be up to 4 hours a day.
Yeah, definitely. I think people don't realize that, how much the waste there is when you're walking so much back and forth when you don't necessarily need to, right?
Yeah, I don't think anybody really measures it, so why would they, right? They just think, and I've had people tell me all the time, like, we had no idea. They're almost embarrassed.
Yeah.
But to be honest with you, even in our own company, so I talk about lean here, like I did go through the transformation of training and I've used it in the way we sell and market our product, but the company itself benefited the most because we went through formal training as a company. You know, what used to take us a couple hours to build a cart now takes us like 26 minutes.
Interesting.
So you just imagine the impact on a business when you can cut, your time down that much. So, I mean, our company's been able to, almost triple sales with pretty much the same amount of people. And lean but what I was going to get at is there's something called the spaghetti diagram where, you just follow somebody around and when they go to get things to manufacture a product. And we were walking 2,000 feet to build a cart. If you can imagine. So we're telling people don't walk, but we're like the worst violators in the world. So it was very eye-opening. But, that was pre-lean. Now that lean's come in place, we don't move at all. I mean, it's a very efficient system. But, again, you don't see what you don't see. So you could be very successful in operations and getting your stuff in and out the door and just think everything is great. But, until you actually measure things, you probably won't change.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that because I think one of the things that's kind of...
We'll be back after a quick break.
You hear a lot about supply chains these days because if the past couple years have taught us anything, it's that an efficient, well-managed supply chain is absolutely critical to keeping businesses successful and consumers happy. I'm Will Haywood and I host a podcast called All Business, No Boundaries, where we talk about supply chains, how they work, what happens when they don't, and the innovations that are redefining what's possible in the world of logistics. Join me for insightful interviews with thought leaders and industry experts. We discuss how optimizing supply chains can break down the barriers that are holding businesses back. That's All Business, No Boundaries by DHL Supply Chain. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Enemy of continuous improvement is becoming complacent. So like you said, if you're in an operation and you're continually performing well, then you may, and you get in the mindset, well, we're doing good. So you never think like, oh, we could do better because you're hitting your goal, you're hitting your mark, but then you don't know that at some point you could continuously improve and then reduce some waste somewhere and actually increase, the bottom line and get that out of there. And I think that getting that complacent state, you definitely want to challenge that constantly, and I think that's a big thing of continuous improvement.
That's right. It's all about incremental, process improvement, and it's done through what's called Kaizen or continuous improvement events. And it's all the beauty of lean. It's done with the people you have who actually do the jobs, because nobody knows better how to do a job than the person who does it. So it's not a manager. I mean, it's not about a VP at a corner office of operations telling the receiving clerk how to receive a truck. It's the receiving clerk and maybe the supervisor and 3 other people figuring out the best way to receive a truck, and then they map that out through a process mapping and take away the waste, and then they create a standard. And and it's not done from the office; it's done from the floor, and that's the hallmark of lean. It's the people solve the problems. And I mean, look, in distribution, you can buy something pretty much from everybody has a competitor these days, and if you're in electrical wholesaling and it takes you 5 days to ship something, I can buy that switch from a guy who can ship it in maybe in 2 hours.
Yeah.
And if the guy who's doing it in 2 hours is lean and is incredibly efficient, that guy's going to weather the storm forever. So I think it's critical. I almost think there is no choice today in distribution. People have to get lean.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you look at, you mentioned Amazon earlier. If you look at the service levels that are expected now from customers, even, B2C is huge, definitely. Customers want things the next day. And at some points, we're probably going to get to some point where people want things the same day. But, even on the B2B side now, you're seeing the same thing where customers are looking for things within, same day, 2 day. Because they're expecting that as a consumer, and now that's kind of getting in their head from the B2B side as well. They want to be serviced quickly. So, the only way to get to those service levels is really, like you said, to cut waste and become lean and continuously improve.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, Amazon's changed the game forever. So, right, the customer mindset is now I want it faster, not slower, and you got to adapt. So, but the good news is if you can adapt, you're going to win business from your competitors just by doing nothing more than becoming more efficient.
Yeah, and I think that's, some people think that the solution is to kind of throw money at it to get a better service level, but sometimes, you look at something simple as, changing the position of a workstation or something. It may make a huge difference that you never expected.
That's right.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, actually. We mentioned the Paul Akers 2-second daily lean, and one of the things he says in the book is that everything should be on wheels, right?
Yeah.
So you can continuously move things around easily if you think that, try something different. So I think it's really interesting that we talked about that, and Newcastle Systems is all about mobile workstations.
Yeah.
So what kind of mobile workstations are you guys offering? I saw there was a couple different sizes and functions, it looked like, but what kind of build outs, I guess, can you have, and what types of customization is there?
Right. So we have it all starts with the power supply. I mean, I would describe these things as batteries on wheels, right? That's a simple way of describing it. It's just the power source on wheels. And so if you have devices that are on the table or a wall and someone's walking there, measure it and figure out, if it's more than 10 minutes, it's probably way too much time, because that adds, if they had 10 minutes, a day, an hour rather, adds up to weeks and weeks of waste. So we have small battery packs that can be powering a laptop, and we have larger battery packs that can power laser printers, computers, label printers, you name it, scales. It just depends on the application. But the technology is either lead acid, which is, think about, sort of like a car battery, and you have a little plug and you plug it into a wall at night. Or you have lithium iron phosphate batteries, which are a lot like, sort of like a cordless drill, and plug them in and you just grab one and pop it into a cart and go. And those are fantastic for 24/7 operations because we've had more customers these days that are going multiple shift to keep up with the demand. And they can't afford to have a cart charging on a wall for 8 hours because they're down, So, they kind of buy the cart for mobility, and then they're like, oh, I got to charge for 8 hours and I just lost what I bought,
Yeah. So with that, you can swap batteries, right?
Exactly. You just literally grab one, pop it in, and keep going. And so those are the battery technologies. In the cart itself, they can be as little as 18 inches wide, and they go up to as far as big as 48 inches wide. So typical app, and typically people will put a screen on there to hold it's a really ergonomic workstation. You can height adjustable kind of screen, so you can get it at eye level. You can keyboard tray, a scanner holder. And most people like to keep their top space, their work surface, pretty clean. At least the lean companies do anyway. And, the use is mainly it's receiving product, labeling and receiving, QA. Picking, we do a decent amount of picking applications for batch picking. One of the biggest, like you say, paper-based picking systems. There are a lot of guys out there who print a piece. Picking eaches is really hard for companies. Single line items. It's just the way we buy things today. We buy one at a time. And if you're grabbing a piece of paper and going out, picking a $1 item and doing the same thing 10 minutes later, you're losing money.
Oh yeah.
So batch picking is a really great way to do things if you have IT support to kind of put all the orders onto a cart. We have these four-tiered carts that are like a bakery rack almost, and you just go out and you could pick, 20, 30, 40 orders at one time. And we've got people that have increased their picks by 30%, just doing nothing more than batch picking. And then on the shipping side, it's really about accuracy. What we've learned over the years is that when you're printing paper or bills of lading or shipping documents, and then you're printing labels, and then you're walking out to the load and trying to marry those up together, it's really easy to make a mistake. Every other month, we're talking to a guy who's like, hey, I put the wrong labels in the wrong box, and the customer gets the wrong stuff. And now I got a return, and I've got a hot rush for the right stuff.
Yeah.
So they just lost money on that transaction. It's because when you don't put the tools together with somebody, they make mistakes. It's just human nature. So on the shipping side, having all of your stuff with you, your printers, your data at the pallet, people make a lot less mistakes. And cycle counting is a big application for us. Just a lot of inventory accuracy. I think if you're into metrics, the Work Council puts out a great metrics report every year, and world-class companies, they're like running at 99.5 or 99. They're almost 100% accurate. And they've got people maintaining inventory levels, and it's costly to have inventory, but they also have people maintaining accuracy just by walking around counting stuff, cycle counting. So the carts are great for that. We're seeing more and more supervisor workstations where, we've learned that if you engage your employees more regularly than, hiding in an office all day, and you get much more productivity out of these people just because they know you now. You actually show that you care, and you can solve problems on the floor. It's hard to solve problems when you're in an office all day.
Yeah, hiding behind the desk, yeah.
And behind a desk, or even if you're not hiding behind a desk, you just, you lose touch. And so we've had more and more people kind of go mobile with supervisors. That's a big change. Let's face it, everybody's used to their little space, their cubicle, their desk. Mm-hmm. And giving that up can be very hard for some people. But I know really the workers really appreciate having their supervisors on the floor. So they actually hold like daily huddles and whatnot. Yeah. It's pretty cool in the warehouse to see 50 people huddle around the manager and going through the daily goals, the KPIs, and maybe celebrating somebody's birthday. And it's just, you got a really great, you can retain people just by doing that.
Yeah. I think that makes a huge difference. And then, I've practiced that myself too. And, not only does it make a huge difference with, the engagement of the employees, but also, it kind of opens your eyes to some things that maybe you might have missed that are happening in terms of like process and things like that. And you actually get to see more of the material flow and how those things are happening. But, employee engagement's a huge, huge one. So like the fact that, you can have everything you need at the mobile station, I think is definitely a huge selling point.
Yep. And then last but not least, we do have some factory floor applications that are not in a warehouse. It really it's just recording data. Like the quality control person has got 10 plastic injection molding machines, and they're just tracking, data for whatever, really just to record and measure. No. But first and foremost, it's, you look at the dock doors, you're in New Jersey, you drive down the Jersey Turnpike and you see a building with, 50 dock doors. That's our space. In between those dock doors, as long as you have a wireless facility, you just take your stuff, put it on wheels, and go to work. And that's where the results come from when you take away all the walking.
Definitely. So now what about in terms of the actual systems and hardware that you can put on there? Are they pretty much you can adapt them to whatever you're currently using, or do you guys offer like a computer screen printer with them?
So we are purely in the business of the mobile power. We rely on either you have your own stuff or you go buy it, but we're agnostic. We don't care about anything but wattages. We care about how much we turn in power and for how long, and we can spec it. But, think about most people have a label printer, a laptop with a screen, a tablet. There's not many big microcomputers are still around. Thin clients are around. Yeah. But that's it, a computing device, maybe a printer and a scanner, and that's what most people need in a warehouse to do their job.
Yeah, definitely. So now how does it go? So if somebody wants to, look at getting, these Newcastle system workstations, now you guys have come out and kind of assess their need. I heard you were talking about, looking at what their current processes are and then assessing that. How does that whole process work with the customer? Yeah.
So we have sales reps sort of put where all the warehouses are, which, we have a guy just outside of New Jersey and Pennsylvania, and a guy down there, Southeast, Texas, California, Indiana, and then in Boston, and they basically will go into a site and do an observation and, charge for that. Usually, if there's waste, they can highlight it. They have a tool, which is it's called a motion meter. It's an app we've designed that can actually you can measure the process, for any process, really. But what's great about it is it creates a pretty detailed report, so you can see where all the waste is in your process. And that's yours to keep. You do what you want with it. But normally, they're going to find motion. That's what they focus on. They're going to say, hey, this guy's walking, I don't know, an hour and a half a day, 2 hours a day. And this is the cost of our product. And, if you want it, it's going to save you this much time and money. It's a pretty simple process. It's painless. Again, if you have label printing and they're walking to get those labels, you might have a case for mobile power.
Interesting. Okay. So you guys actually can give a really good evaluation of where that waste is happening in operation as well. So I see too, on the website, it looks like you guys have a couple different tools as well. So there's like the motion meter app, which you're talking about now. Is that available to the public?
It is. It's unfortunately right now it's just for iPhones, but soon we'll have it for Androids. But yeah, I encourage people. It's free. Just go to the App Store, download it, and start playing with it. But use it anywhere you want. It's a great tool. Again, just observing a process honestly and measuring it, you're doing more than a lot of the other companies are.
Interesting. And now what about so I see also on the website you guys have a lean warehouse audit. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's a downloadable spreadsheet, and there's a lot of stuff on there. I mean, everybody started as pushing. I mean, one of the biggest mistakes I see when I walk in the warehouse, if it's not clearly marked like racks and aisles and, put away areas, it's really hard you think about a material handler. And he doesn't know where to put stuff. I mean, the poor guy doesn't have a chance. So, but I think the tool itself gives you a benchmark, and then you can either talk to the rep on the phone or the rep can come see you. Either way, it's just a reference point, but I think for most people, you got to get a little training so it can actually mean something.
Definitely interesting. So the other thing I wanted to talk to you about too was, I saw you had published an article, I guess on your LinkedIn about visiting a company that ships $1 billion annually. So can you tell us a little bit about that and kind of what the experience with the operation is there? Because I think, a lot of people, when they hear that the company's shipping $1 billion annually, they're probably thinking that, this company, must be like fully automated and they must have the best technology that's out there right now and things like that. But, reading the article, it sounds like that's not necessarily the case here, right?
No, I mean, I was super impressed by this place because I don't want to give out the name because then I want them to be out there because they're competitors. But I'll say they're distributing a product that it's got, maybe 100,000 SKUs and like a lot of other companies, and it just really, really dialed in to the basic stuff. There's a couple conveyors in this place, but, nothing that you hadn't seen 30 years ago, lower type conveyors. The product is not really conveyable. A lot of it's really big stuff, so it's hard to store for a lot of people. But, remember when we were talking before about how lean can be a competitive advantage? These guys have stolen a lot of customers from the competitors just because they can stock things that nobody else can stock, So the basic things that I see, like they're very good at, the warehouse is extremely well organized, and they have the products are, it's high velocity pick zone, which is, not used by a lot of companies, but they have out of 100,000 items, I think 90 of them are truly fast movers, and those things are within feet of the shipping docks, and a random assortment of things, by the way. It's incredible how different they are. And they replenish that zone maybe, it might be 2 or 3 times a day. So they're always keeping those high movers really close to the shipping guys, and they just grab it and ship it. So that's that little change creates a lot of speed for companies that are struggling. The other thing is, picking, do a lot of manual picking. It's all manual picking. But they put all the items, the high-moving items, right at the most ergonomic spot, like sort of like, waist level up to your chest, right in the middle, the sweet spot. They're not making people bend or reach for those fast-moving items. And I know this sounds really simple. It is. But very few companies really do this stuff. And it's like the blocking and tackling of a football team, the basic things. They're really good, and they don't have a really fancy WMS system. It's homegrown. It's 25 years old.
Oh,
you
wow.
know, they use
That's really
RF.
interesting.
It is, yeah. I mean, no one's ever heard of it because it's theirs. And they're using RF scanning. But what's interesting, the operations guy is really close to the IT people. The IT people in this company, they understand that if they can make the warehouse more efficient with speed and scanning and whatnot, then the whole company is better.
Definitely, yeah.
And it treats his people fantastically. You know, the culture, they retain their people. I think the average in one department, I think it was returns. I think the average tenure was 18 years.
Wow.
So, I mean, there's very little onboarding, but when they bring people on, it's a 6-week process before you actually get to do something on your own. You're being shadowed, you're being taught, you're being treated, coached, mentored, and you think about how that's compared to a lot of people. They need a body and they just hire you and throw you the dogs.
Yeah. I think that's like a huge point because, right now, we're talking about service levels and everything's so fast paced and, like you said, they just throw a body in there just because they need somebody to just move stuff around. And, they don't get to go through like the proper process, learn about the company, learn about the processes the proper way. And a lot of times you see processes kind of break down a little bit because people start to improvise because they never really knew or they never really were told thoroughly what they're supposed to do. So the fact that, I think that they're giving 6 weeks until anybody actually does anything, I mean, that's huge. And that's probably playing one of the biggest roles, I think, in probably their success that you're talking about.
Yeah, and it's all people. I mean, it's people, it's process, it's technology. But technology, like barcoding, is still the number one innovative tool in warehousing, believe it or not. As long as I've been doing this, I can't believe it, but some things just work really well, And I know robots, and I'm sure you'll have conversations on your podcast with highly automated companies that do really cool stuff with, God knows, drones, collaborative robots, and it's all great stuff, but it's really expensive, and the average company doesn't have that kind of a budget. And I saw what these guys are doing, shipping that much money with very few resources. I just found it to be incredibly impressive. Great people, good culture, treat them with respect and train them. And I think they probably pay them a little better than the average. And they got to compete with the Amazons of the world too, because they have a lot of distribution centers in this part of Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And then, the barcode technology, they've got it where the IT guys are bought into it. They don't just hand them a scanner and say, go. They are looking, how do I make the scanner more efficient for you, Mr. Picker? So maybe, there's a relationship between the IT guys and the operations guys. Where a lot of companies, it's adversarial,
Yeah, there's not really that collaborative work.
No.
Like that. Yeah.
So I just think that technology and people and their processes are really good, right? The basic, how they lay out their warehouse, their zones, real simple things. They just do that better than other people. And it allows them to grow in a really old building, by the way. I mean, it's ancient. So I was impressed. I think it's one of the most interesting places I've been in the last 5 years because I've seen a lot of automation. It's cool, and products are moving fast, and I get it. It's great, but none of this existed. And he told me the volume he's putting out. I was dumbfounded. I was like, oh my God, it's crazy. So
yeah, wow, that's very impressive. Yeah. So definitely, if you listeners check out Kevin's LinkedIn, I'll put it on the blog post accompanying this episode to check out that article. But it's really interesting to read the points that he has in there of the kind of simple, basic things that they're doing without a lot of technology. So, there is a lot of opportunity there to improve your operation and bring it to that next level without having to invest tons of money. It's just about kind of putting in the time to do things the right way.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So Kevin, why don't how can people get in touch with you or learn more about Newcastle Systems if they're interested in learning more about it?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, go to the website, which is NewcastleSYS.com, Newcastle Syst. You can reach me directly K Ledversis, which is Ledversis at newcastlesys.com, and go onto our website if you want, as Kevin mentioned, a lean audit or motion meter evaluation, or just want to ask if the product is something that's going to help you. Just click on the map. We have a support map with all the sales guys, and they're all process motivated people. Our product is not for everybody. I'll tell you that. You have to need it for it to work. You have to use it for it to work, and that's what they're here to do. They're here to help.
Definitely. All right, Kevin. So, it's always great to talk to another Kevin. So thank you so much.
I'll never forget your name as long as I live.
I know. We're both Kevin L. too. That's the thing too.
That's crazy.
So great to talk to you, Kevin, on the New Warehouse podcast, and we'll be posting all that information about Newcastle on our blog as well at thenewwarehouse.com.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want more content from the New Warehouse, check out our new video series called All Hands on LinkedIn. Just search for the New Warehouse on LinkedIn and follow along.